Your Magic the Gathering news report is brought to you in part by the channel MTG Anarchy, where we take a look into the world of Magic the Gathering and throw a little bit of mischief and chaos into the mix. Welcome to your Magic the Gathering news report, spoiler edition. My name's Michael, it's great to see you here. Today we're going to be discussing the new spoilers that were revealed as of April 2nd of 2020 for Ikoria Lair of Behemoths. Now when it comes to these cards, I do want to let you know ahead of time that I will go ahead and talk about the card, what the card does, as well as my opinions on the card when we get to that card. Also, if you found a card that was released on April 2nd that I had not discussed, please let me know in the comments down below so I can go ahead and put it in the next video that I put out on spoilers. But with everything out of the way, let's jump right into the spoilers for April 2nd of 2020 for Ikoria Lair of Behemoths. The first card we are going to discuss is Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Now this King of Monsters costs 3 colorless, a red and a green mana to cast, is a legendary creature dinosaur, has a power and toughness of a 7/3, has trample, and lethal damage dealt to creatures you control is determined by their power rather than their toughness. Now this is one way to reveal the King of Monsters, Godzilla, into the Magic the Gathering universe. Honestly, the ability in itself, I don't know how to really explain it, just because of the fact that its lethal damage dealt to creatures you control is determined by their power rather than their toughness. So I don't know how that is going to impact the game in any sort of way. This is always going to be good in a red-green stompy deck. Honestly, it's really cool. It's really awesome for this art, which I'm guessing is only going to be in the collector's edition. But honestly, I like this. I like how they brought Godzilla in. So to me, that's my opinion on it. Now, the next couple of cards we're going to be discussing is based off the Commander product. So if you're into Commander and you want to play one of these creatures as your Commander, then you'll be able to find them there. Let's first take a look at Otrimi, the Ever Playful. This creature costs 3 colorless, a black, a green, and a blue mana to cast, or you can mutate it for 1 colorless, a black, a green, and a blue. It's a legendary creature, Nightmare Beast, has power and toughness of a 6/6, has trample, and whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, return target creature card with mutate from your graveyard to your hand. Now before we discuss my thoughts on this card, let's discuss this new mechanic, mutate. Now mutate is, if you cast this spell for its mutate cost, put it over or under target non-human creature you own. They mutate onto the creature on top, plus all abilities from under it. Now please keep in mind that with mutate, since it is a new mechanic, there are new rules with it, and I would advise you to look those rules online as you see fit. Back to Otrimi, I actually like this as a Commander card. I feel like this is going to be bringing things new to the format that we really haven't seen before in Commander, and honestly, this looks fun. The ability looks fun, mutate mechanic looks fun, so I'm excited to see Otrimi. So that is my thought on Otrimi, the Ever Playful. Our next commander up is Dorina Kudro. Now this legendary human soldier costs 1 colorless, a red, a white, and a black mana to cast, has a power and toughness of 3/3, and her abilities are, when Dorina Kudro enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token for each time you've cast a commander from the command zone this game. And other humans you control get +2/+0. When it comes to this specific commander, honestly, to me, this feels a little bit like an aristocrats-like commander. It's going to be tribal humans, so human wizards, human whatever. You're going to be focusing on those types of creatures, and it's a token-esque build, so honestly, to me, it's not my favorite out of all the commanders, but I'm excited to see what she does in the format. So that's Dorina Kudro. Our next commander is Calamax, the Stormsire. This legendary elemental dinosaur costs 1 colorless, a green, blue, and red mana to cast, has a power and toughness of 4/4, does whenever you cast your first instant spell each turn. If Calamax, the Stormsire, is tapped, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy, and whenever you copy an instant spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Calamax. When I look at Calamax as a commander, I see this as a Cascade or a Storm commander build, but with the added benefit of green. Honestly, to me, that's powerful in its own ways. And if a person builds this right, I could see this specific commander doing really well, maybe even competitively. Again, I don't know for sure, but one thing's for certain, keep an eye out for this commander. Our next commander we're talking about is Kathril Aspect Warper. Now, this legendary nightmare insect costs 2 colorless, a white, black, and green mana to cast, has a power and toughness of 3/3, and does the following. When Kathril Aspect Warper enters the battlefield, put a flying counter on any creature you control if a creature card in your graveyard has flying. Repeat this process for First Strike, Double Strike, Death Touch, Hexproof, Indestructible, Lifelink, Menace, Reach, Trample, and Vigilance. Then put a +1/+1 counter on Kathril for each counter put on a creature this way. Now, when I saw this specific commander, I was excited. I wanted to build this commander because not only are you doing the Voltron-y thing with this commander, you are doing that to all of your other creatures as long as you have different abilities in your graveyards. Now, one thing I will have to say is that also going to work with Annihilator? Because if that does, this will get out of control, and honestly, I am excited. So let's go ahead and welcome Kathril Aspect Warper. The final commander we are discussing today is Gavi Nest Warden. This legendary human shaman costs 2 colorless, a blue, red, and white mana to cast, has a power and toughness of a 2/5, and does the following. You may pay 0 rather than pay the cycling cost of the first card you cycle each turn. Whenever you draw your second card each turn, create a 2/2 red and white dinosaur cat creature token. When it comes to this commander, honestly, I don't know how I would play with it. I mean, cycling is going to be a big thing, a big theme in the deck for commander, but honestly, getting a 2/2 out of cycling something, as long as you draw your second card, not bad. I think that's a good benefit, and I think this may be a good commander, but that's Gavi Nest Warden. Moving away from commander, let's talk about Huntmaster Liger. Now, this cat costs 3 colorless and a white to cast, or you can pay its mutate cost of 2 colorless and a white. It has a power and toughness of 3 and 4, and whenever this creature mutates, other creatures you control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. Now, this card to me is one of those cards where you're going to see in a special sort of build, mutate builds, for example, and I'm kind of excited to see how this plays in a limited-esque format and even a constructed-esque format, but we'll have to wait to see how this card does. Next up is Karuga the Macrosage. This legendary dinosaur hippo costs 3 colorless and 2 blue-green hybrid mana to cast, has a power and toughness of 5/4, has the companion ability where your starting deck contains only cards with converted mana cost 3 or greater and land cards, and when Karuga the Macrosage enters the battlefield, draw a card for each other permanent you control with converted mana cost 3 or greater. If you're wanting to know more about the companion ability and how it works, please go ahead and look that up online. Now, when it comes to this card, honestly, this seems like a fun card. Extra card draw is actually really good, and I think that this isn't that bad, so let's see what happens.
Next up, we have Gloom Pangolin. This Nightmare Pangolin has a casting cost of a 2 and a black, and has a power and toughness of a 1/5. Although this is a basic creature, it is an adorable basic creature, so expect this to be played in draft. Our next creature is Aluna, Apex of Wishes. This legendary beast elemental dinosaur costs 2 colorless, a green, blue, and red mana to cast, or you can cast it for its mutate cost, which is 3 colorless, a hybrid red-green mana, and 2 blue mana. It has a power and toughness of 6/6, flying, trample, and whenever this creature mutates, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land permanent card. Put that card onto the battlefield or into your hand. Now, this is a very powerful creature. Honestly, I love the ability, I love what it does, and honestly, I think this is going to be a fun commander to go ahead and build around, but that's just my opinion there. Next up, we have our first Planeswalker, Luca, Coppercoat Outcast. This Planeswalker has a casting cost of 3 colorless mana and 2 red mana. It also has a loyalty of 5 and does the following. If you +1 this commander, exile the top 3 cards of your library. Creature cards exiled this way gain. You may cast this card from exile as long as you control a Luca Planeswalker. If you use the -2 ability, Exile target creature you control, then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card with the highest converted mana cost. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest at the bottom of your library in a random order. And if you finally get up to that -7 ability, each creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each opponent. Honestly, I think that there are really good, amazing abilities with this Planeswalker, especially with that -2 ability, but the -7 is going to get a lot of people if people let that happen. So honestly, keep that in mind, but it looks like a fun Planeswalker. Let's see what it can do. Our next Planeswalker is Vivien, Monster's Advocate. Now this Planeswalker has a casting cost of 3 colorless and 2 green, has a loyalty of 3, and does the following. Her static ability is you may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you may cast creature spells from the top of your library. Her +1 is create a 3/3 green beast creature token. Put your choice of a vigilance counter, a reach counter, or a trample counter on it. Her -2 is when you cast your next creature spell this turn, search your library for a creature card with lesser converted mana cost. Put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. Vivien actually seems like a very fun Planeswalker to play with, and especially with that -2 ability, honestly, I could see there being wild shenanigans with this card. So keep an eye out for Vivien, Monster's Advocate. Our next creature is Luminous Broodmoth. This insect costs 2 colorless and 2 white to cast, has a power and toughness of 3/4, has flying, and whenever a creature you control without flying dies, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a flying counter on it. To me, this is just an amazing card, and I could actually see this being played in any sort of white deck. Not only because it does the whole regenerate with any other creature without flying, but it's an amazing creature in general, so keep your eye out for it. Next up, we have Zagoth Mamba. This Nightmare Snake costs 1 black mana to cast, has a power and toughness of 1/1, and whenever this creature mutates, target creature an opponent controls gets a -2/-2 until end of turn. Now this seems like a really fun creature to play with, especially with the mutate ability. So honestly, I could see this being played in multiple different formats, but keep an eye out for it. Next up, we have Drannith Stinger. This human wizard costs 1 colorless and a red to cast, has a power and toughness of 2/2, and whenever you cycle another card, Drannith Stinger deals 1 damage to each opponent. It has a cycling of 1. Which you pay 1, discard this card, draw a card. With cycling having such a big effect, I like seeing how there are cards that will interpret this sort of ability. So honestly, I'm excited for this. Next up is Fully Grown. Now this instant costs 2 colorless and a green, and does. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. Put a trample counter on it. We have seen other green cards do similar things like this, but I like how they are just keeping the trample counter on the creature when it's being targeted. So again, that's an awesome move. I like where Wizards is going with that. Next up, we have Moss Coat Gorlak. This beast costs 3 to cast, has a power and toughness of 2/4, and it has vigilance. There's nothing much to say about this card other than we have seen other cards like this before, but it's good to play in limited and maybe even draft. So again, keep that in mind. Our next creature is Bristling Boar. This boar has a casting cost of 3 colorless and a green, has a power and toughness of 4/3, and Bristling Boar can't be blocked by more than 1 creature.
Honestly, the shenanigans you could actually do with this card if you put a menace counter on it. That would actually be fun to actually see play, and I wonder if people are going to actually do that. Next up is Pacifism. This card costs 1 colorless and a white, is an enchantment aura, and you can enchant creature, and enchanted creature can't attack or block. To me, this is just another reprint of a card that we've already seen, we've already talked about. It's a good card, but again, we've seen it before. So, Pacifism. Next up, we have Cloud Piercer. Now, this creature dinosaur costs 4 colorless and a red to cast, unless you want to pay its mutate cost, which is 3 colorless and a red to cast. It has a power and toughness of 5/4, has reach, and whenever this creature mutates, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. This seems like a pretty decent card for common. Honestly, I think you could see a little bit of shenanigans with this, especially when you start doing the whole mutate thing. But yeah, I think you could see this played in draft. So that's my opinion on it. Our next creature is Garuda, Doom of Depths. This legendary demon kraken costs 4 colorless and 2 hybrid blue-black mana, has a power and toughness of 6/6, has companion, which is your starting deck contains only cards with even converted mana costs, and when Garuda enters the battlefield, each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. put a creature card with an even converted mana cost from among those cards onto the battlefield under your control. Now I can actually say that this card seems like a really good card to the point that it will do some crazy things in the future for any sort of format, so check it out. Next up, we have Lutri, the Spell Chaser. Now this adorable little legendary elemental otter costs 1 colorless and 2 hybrid blue-red mana to cast, has a power and toughness of 3/2, has Companion, which is each non-land card in your starting deck has a different name, has Flash, and when Lutri, the Spell Chaser, enters the battlefield, if you cast it, copy target instant or sorcery spell you control. You may choose new targets for that copy. Being a Commander player, it sucks because I will never be able to play with this card because this card was instantly banned when they revealed it, but in other formats, this is a playable card. Honestly, I will see this card doing wonderful things in the future, so keep your eye out for this one. Our next creature is Void Beckner. This Nightmare Horror costs 6 colorless and 2 black to cast, has a power and toughness of 8/8, has Death Touch, cycling 2 and black mana, and when you cycle Void Beckner, put a Death Touch counter on target creature you control. This actually doesn't seem like a bad card, and if you cycle it, you give something Death Touch, so honestly, pretty decent card. I'd say it may see a little bit of play, but I don't know how much, so keep your eye out for it. Our next legendary creature is Umori the Collector. This legendary ooze costs 2 colorless and a hybrid black-green mana to cast, has a power and toughness of 4/5, has Companion, each non-land card in your starting deck shares a card type, and as Umori the Collector enters the battlefield, choose a card type. Spells you cast of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast. Ladies and gentlemen, they finally did it. They finally released a ooze legendary creature, and honestly, I like what it can do. So to me, first thing I'm gonna build is a tribal ooze deck with this. Thank you so much, Wizards. Our next creature is Titanoth Rex. Now this dinosaur beast costs 7 colorless and 2 green, has a power and toughness of an 11/11, has trample, cycling for 1 colorless and a green, and when you cycle Titanoth Rex, put a trample counter on target creature you control. Now with this card in particular, I don't know how playable it's going to be. I think it's just going to be playable for the cycling ability, but I am excited to see where this card can go. Next up, we have Snapdax, Apex of the Hunt. This legendary dinosaur cat nightmare costs 1 colorless, a red, a white, and a black mana, has a power and toughness of 3/5, has a morph cost of 2 colorless, a black-red hybrid mana, and 2 white mana, has double strike, and whenever this creature mutates, it deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, an opponent controls, and you gain 4 life. Honestly, I want to see where this card goes, especially with the whole double strike and the whole damage and gain life sort of situation. It's all things that I'm kind of used to already in Commander, and I want to see how this plays, so let's see how this one goes. Next up, we have Essence Scatter. This instant costs 1 colorless and a blue, and you can counter target creature spell. Again, this is just another reprint that we've already seen, however with different art, so I like what they've done with it art-wise, but we've seen this card before. Our next creature is Grim Dancer. This nightmare costs 1 colorless and 2 black mana to cast, has a power and toughness of 3/3, and does. Grim Dancer enters the battlefield with your choice of 2 different counters on it, from among Menace, Death Touch, and Lifelink. This card actually seems like a really good card, and I can bet to see that this will be a big thing in Standard, as well as a lot of different formats, so keep your eye on this one in specific. Our final card that we're going to be taking a look at for spoilers for April 2nd is Sprite Dragon. This little fairy dragon costs a blue and a red mana to cast, has a power and toughness of 1/1, has flying and haste, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Sprite Dragon. This seems like a very fun card to play with. As a flyer and has multicolored mana, I could see this being played in multiple different types of decks. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see this being pretty competitive. That's just my thoughts on it. Those were your spoilers for Ikoria Lair of Behemoths for April 2nd of 2020. Now you may be asking yourself, weren't there other things that were spoiled today that you did not mention? Short-term answer, yes. More things were spoiled today. However, due to these cards being alternate versions of cards that we've already discussed in the video, instead of discussing those cards, let's just show them in their full glory to epic music going on in the background. But that was your Magic the Gathering news report, spoilers edition, here on MTG Anarchy. If you liked this video, I would appreciate it if you liked and shared it, as we want this to get out into the algorithm so more people can see these types of videos in the future. Also, I would appreciate it if you would go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell notification to keep up to date with any new videos that do come out here on MTG Anarchy. And finally, I would appreciate it if you not only supported small-time creators here on YouTube focusing on Magic the Gathering, as we are one big community, but also went and supported your local LGS, as we are currently in a situation, and if you are financially stable, to go ahead and do so. Again, this is Michael from MTG Anarchy, here with your Magic the Gathering news report, spoiler edition. Thank you so much for watching, and have a safe and fantastic day. Thanks again.